My name is Eleanor Johnson and I'm 62 years old. I live alone in a small house on the edge of town, surrounded by framed photographs that I can no longer look at without pain. Some of them I have turned face down because the smiles in those pictures don't belong to me anymore. I raised children who no longer look me in the eye. My son, Daniel, built a successful life far from here, yet he carries a bitterness toward me that I still don't understand. He speaks to me only when he feels forced to, his words clipped and heavy, as if each one costs him too much. People in church call me strong. They see me arrive every Sunday in my pressed dress and careful smile, and they think I'm fine. But strength is just another mask I've learned to wear. When I close the door behind me, the silence becomes unbearable. I often sit in the dark, asking myself the same question over and over. What did I do so wrong to deserve being forgotten by my own child? I sat in the living room as the evening light slipped through the blinds, painting long stripes across the floor. On the coffee table lay an old photo of Daniel when he was just a boy, 10 years old, smiling with 2 front teeth missing, his arm around me as if I were the safest place in the world. I picked up the frame with trembling hands. My chest ached as I traced the curve of his smile with my finger. I tried, baby, I whispered, barely moving my lips. I did the best I knew how. The years between that photograph and today felt like a cruel trick. I remembered late nights at the factory, sewing until my fingers burned, just to keep food on the table. I remembered the shoes I bought him when mine had holes. I remembered every sacrifice, but those memories seemed to mean nothing now. Daniel had built a wall so high around his heart that I couldn't climb it anymore. He didn't return my calls, didn't visit on holidays, didn't let me see his little girl except on rare occasions. It was as if my love had turned into something heavy, something shameful he no longer wanted to carry. The clock ticked on, steady and merciless. I pressed the photo against my chest, feeling the edges bite into my skin, and for a moment I wished time could fold back, carrying me to the days when Daniel still needed me. Then the doorbell rang. My heart stumbled. Nobody ever came here unannounced. Slowly I set the photograph down and moved toward the door. When I opened it, there she was, Lily, my 9-year-old granddaughter, standing with a small stuffed bunny clutched against her chest. Her eyes searched mine, wide and uncertain. "Grandma," she said softly, "can I stay here for a while?" Lily stood on my porch, clutching that worn little bunny, her braids a bit uneven as if she had hurried out without care. The street behind her was empty, the sun already sinking low, and for a moment I wondered if I was dreaming. "Of course, baby," I said, stepping aside. "Come in." She walked in slowly, her small sneakers squeaking against the floor. She looked around the room the way children do when they are trying to measure if they are safe. I wanted to scoop her into my arms, but I held back, afraid of scaring her away. I made her some tea with extra honey. Though she was too young for coffee, she wanted to sit at the table like grown folks. She sipped carefully, her eyes never leaving mine. Finally, she asked the question I wasn't ready for. "Grandma, why does Daddy say you're not a good person?" The words struck harder than any slap. My throat tightened, and I placed the teacup down before my hands betrayed me with their shaking. I stared at her little face, Daniel's eyes looking back at me through hers. Innocent, searching, desperate to understand. I wanted to say so much. I wanted to tell her the truth about sacrifice, about love, about the nights I worked myself to exhaustion so her father could have the future he now enjoyed. But the words sat like stones in my chest. Instead, I reached across the table and touched her hand gently. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "sometimes people carry pain they don't know how to put into words." She nodded slowly, but her eyes filled with tears. She leaned closer, lowering her voice to a secret. "Daddy said, you hurt him. That's why he doesn't want me to see you too much." The silence after her words felt endless. My heart cracked open all over again. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about me and Daniel anymore. This was about Lily, about what she would come to believe. Her words echoed in my chest long after they left her mouth. Daddy said you hurt him. I almost dropped my cup. The steam rising from the tea blurred my vision. Or maybe it was the tears fighting to escape. For years, I had begged God to explain why my son had turned his back on me. And now, through the lips of his child, I was hearing the answer. An accusation I didn't even understand. Lily waited for me to respond, her small fingers tightening around the stuffed bunny in her lap. Her eyes were so wide, so fragile, as if my answer might shape her entire world. I forced my voice to stay calm, though my insides trembled. Lily, I said gently, your daddy went through things I may never fully know. But what I need you to understand is this. I never stopped loving him, not for 1 second. She tilted her head, studying me, as if weighing truths against truths. But if you love him, why does he get so angry when I talk about you? That question pierced deeper than anything else, because I didn't have a simple answer. Because anger has roots that grow from silence, from wounds never spoken, from stories told only in half-truths. I looked at her and felt the weight of generations pressing down on me. I couldn't let Daniel's bitterness poison this child's heart too. Sometimes, I whispered, people carry pain like a heavy bag, and instead of setting it down, they pass it to the ones closest to them. That's not your fault, baby, and it's not yours to carry. Her little hand slid into mine, warm and trembling. Grandma, she said, voice breaking, I don't want Daddy to be mad at me for being here. The words shattered me. I pulled her gently into my arms, pressing her against my chest, wishing I could protect her from every shadow. And as I held her, I knew one thing for certain. Daniel's silence was no longer just a wall between him and me. It was starting to reach for his daughter, too. The next afternoon, there was a knock at the back door. Only one person ever came that way. It was Grace, my neighbor of 20 years. She stood there with a sweet potato pie in her hands, her smile warm but her eyes sharp, as if she could already sense the storm brewing inside my house. Eleanor, she said softly, I made too much again. Thought you might help me finish it. I let her in, grateful for the company. Lily was in the living room drawing with crayons, her little shoulders hunched forward as if she was carrying secrets too heavy for her age. Grace noticed but didn't ask. She knew better than to pry in front of the child. We sat in the kitchen, two women who had shared decades of joys and sorrows across a fence line. I cut us slices of pie, though neither of us seemed hungry. Grace reached across the table and touched my wrist. What's wrong, Ellie? She asked quietly. I can see it in your face. Something's weighing on you. My throat tightened. I wanted to lie, to say I was fine, but the words tumbled out before I could stop them. My own son tells his little girl I'm not a good person. She came here repeating his words, Grace. A child should never have to carry that kind of poison. Grace shook her head slowly, her eyes full of sorrow. Daniel's been hard on you for a long time, but children don't turn cold without a reason. He's holding something against you, something he won't let go. I don't know what it is, I admitted, my voice trembling. I gave him everything I had. I worked myself raw to put food on the table. Why would he hate me like this? Grace's hand squeezed mine tighter. Hurt people, but you can't carry his silence and his anger forever. At some point he has to face you, or the truth will eat him alive. Her words settled deep in my chest, but before I could respond, I noticed movement through the kitchen window. Across the street, parked in front of my house, was a black sedan. My heart stopped when I recognized the man behind the wheel. It was Daniel, watching. I froze at the window, staring at the car across the street. Daniel's face was half hidden in shadow, But I knew that profile as well as I knew my own. My son, my blood, watching me like a stranger. I thought he would drive away, the way he always did, slipping in and out of my life without a word. But this time, the car door opened. His shoes hit the pavement, his stride steady and determined. By the time he reached my porch, my hands were shaking. I opened the door before he could knock. "Daniel?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He brushed past me into the living room, his eyes scanning the walls as if the house itself was guilty of something. Lily looked up from her drawing, startled, then quickly tucked herself into the corner of the couch, clutching her bunny tight. Daniel's voice was low but sharp. "Why is she here?" I swallowed hard. She came on her own. I didn't call her. I didn't even know she was coming. He turned towards me, his jaw tight. "You should have sent her back. You know better." My chest ached. "She's a child, Daniel. She needed comfort, and she's my granddaughter." His eyes flashed with something I couldn't read. Anger, pain, maybe both. "You don't get to play the saint, Mom. Not after what you did." The room spun around me. The same words I had heard in silence for years, now spoken out loud. But still, no explanation. No truth. "Daniel," I said, my voice breaking. "Please, tell me, what did I do? What is it that you've carried all these years?" His mouth opened, then closed again. For a moment I saw the boy he once was, the boy who used to run into my arms after school, who believed I could protect him from anything. But the moment vanished. He shook his head, his face cold as stone. "You'll never know," he said flatly. Then he turned and walked out the door, leaving it open behind him. Lily's quiet sobs filled the silence he left behind, and I stood there, my heart splintering in ways I didn't know were still possible. That night, the house felt heavier than ever. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Daniel's words running circles in my mind. "You'll never know." I turned on my side, clutching the blanket, when I heard a soft creak at the door. Lily stood there in her pajamas, her stuffed bunny pressed to her chest. Her face was wet with tears. "Grandma," she whispered, "can I sleep with you tonight?" I opened my arms without hesitation. She climbed onto the bed, curling against me the way Daniel used to when he was her age. Her small body trembled. After a long silence, she whispered again, voice breaking. "I heard Daddy talking on the phone. He said you destroyed his childhood." The words hit me like a stone to the chest. I froze, my hand resting on her back, as if steadying her could somehow steady me too. "Baby," I said softly. "Sometimes people remember the past in ways that don't tell the whole story. Your daddy, he carries pain that I don't fully understand." She looked up at me with those wide, searching eyes. "But did you hurt him?" My heart cracked open. I wanted to scream that I had given everything, that I had loved him with every breath in me. But I couldn't burden this little girl with all the weight I carried. Instead, I kissed her forehead and whispered, "No, Lily. I never wanted to hurt your daddy. Not ever. I loved him then, and I love him now." She tucked herself deeper into my arms, finally drifting into sleep. But I stayed awake, staring into the darkness. For the first time, I wondered if Daniel's anger was rooted in something I had long forgotten, some wound buried in the past that I never realized I had left behind. And as the night stretched on, one truth grew sharper in my chest. Silence wasn't protecting us anymore. It was tearing us apart. The next morning I wandered into the attic, searching for a blanket to cover Lily while she still slept. Dust rose in the thin beams of light slipping through the small window. The air smelled of cedar and thyme. My eyes fell on a cardboard box pushed into the corner, taped shut but worn with age. I hadn't touched it in years. Something inside me stirred. Hesitation, fear, curiosity. I pulled it closer, my knees aching as I sat on the floor. With trembling fingers, I opened the box. Inside were stacks of letters, some sealed, some torn open, all written in my own handwriting. Letters I had once written to Daniel, letters I never sent. I picked one up, the ink faded but still legible. Daniel, I know you don't understand why I worked so many nights. I know you think I left you alone, but every shift I took, every hour I spent away was to keep a roof over us. I'm sorry if you thought my absence meant I didn't love you. Nothing could be further from the truth. My vision blurred as I read the words I had written decades ago but never shared. Another letter lay folded at the bottom of the box. When I opened it, my heart stopped. I heard you crying that night, Daniel. I wanted to explain, but I was so afraid. I know you believe I chose someone else over you. Please believe me, my son, I never chose him. I only did what I thought would keep you safe. The paper shook in my hands. There it was, the wound I had tried to bury. The memory of a night Daniel must have misunderstood. A night when my choices had left scars I never knew ran so deep. I pressed the letter to my chest, whispering to myself, "So this is what you've been carrying, my boy. All these years, and you never knew the truth." At that moment I realized that silence had not only broken me, it had broken Daniel too. I sat at the kitchen table with the old letter spread before me. My hands trembled as I dialed Daniel's number. I almost hung up before it rang through, but then his voice came on, cold and clipped. "What do you want, Mom?" "Daniel," I said, my voice unsteady, "please come. I need to talk to you, face to face." There was a long silence on the line, heavy and suffocating. Finally he sighed. "Fine, don't make me regret it." When he arrived that evening, Lily was upstairs and Grace had gone home. It was just the two of us. The weight of years sat between us at the table, heavier than the air itself. I pushed the letter toward him. "I found this," I whispered. "Please read it." He didn't touch it. His eyes burned into mine. "You don't need old papers to tell me what I already know. You abandoned me." My heart lurched. "Daniel, no. I never abandoned you. Every night I was gone, every hour I worked, it was for you." His jaw clenched, his voice sharp. "That's not how it felt. You left me alone. You chose him instead of me." The words struck like knives. I reached for the letter again, my voice rising with desperation. "I never chose him. I chose you, Daniel. I chose to survive, to keep us safe. You saw only half the story, and I was too afraid to explain. That's my sin. Not betrayal, but silence." For a moment his face softened, the fury flickering into something like confusion. But just as quickly he shut it down. "You'll say anything now," he muttered, standing to leave. I stood too, tears spilling down my cheeks. "No, Daniel. I will not let you walk out without hearing me. You've carried this hatred your whole life, and it's built on a lie." He stopped at the door, his back to me, shoulders rigid. "Then prove it," he said quietly. The letter lay on the table between us, trembling in the faint breeze from the open window. Daniel finally picked up the letter, his fingers brushing against the paper as if it might burn him. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the words I had written decades ago. I watched his face change, first rigid, then confused, then clouded with something deeper. He looked up at me, his voice low. "That night, the storm, I remember. You sent me to bed, and when I woke up you were gone. He was here. I thought you chose him over me." The memory returned to me in sharp, painful flashes. The man I had been seeing back then, a man who promised to help but brought nothing but trouble. That night he came pounding at my door, drunk and furious. I told Daniel to go upstairs, to stay in his room no matter what he heard. I had faced that storm alone, protecting Daniel from words and hands no child should ever witness. By the time Daniel crept back downstairs, I was gone, driven to my sister's house in the middle of the night, too shaken to explain. And in his young heart, the story had written itself. His mother had left him. I covered my face with my hands. Daniel, I was trying to protect you. I stayed with him longer than I should have because I thought it was the only way to keep food in this house. But I never chose him over you. Never. His breathing grew unsteady. He sank into the chair, staring at the letter again. All these years. I hated you for leaving me. I thought you loved him more than me. Tears blurred my vision. I loved you more than anything, Daniel. Every decision I made, good or bad, was because I thought it would save you. And maybe I was wrong in how I did it, but I never stopped being your mother. For the first time in decades, silence wasn't a wall between us. It was a crack in his armor. He pressed his hands to his face, his shoulders shaking, and in that moment I saw not a grown man, but the broken boy who had lived inside him all along, aching for answers I had been too afraid to give. The next morning, Daniel returned. He didn't knock this time, just stepped quietly into the kitchen, where I was sitting with a cup of coffee gone cold. His face looked different, softer, as if the weight he had carried for years had finally begun to loosen. Before I could speak, Lily came bounding down the stairs. She froze when she saw her father, her little bunny dangling from her hand. Her eyes darted between us, wide with fear. Daniel crouched down and opened his arms. "Come here, baby." Lily hesitated, then ran into him, burying her face against his chest. He held her tightly, and when he looked at me over her shoulder, I saw tears in his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "I was wrong. I let a memory define everything. I let my anger blind me." I reached across the table, unsure if he would take my hand. To my surprise, he set Lily gently on the chair and placed his hand in mine. For the first time in years, there was no distance. Lily slid off her seat and climbed between us, pressing her small hand over ours, as if sealing something unspoken. Her touch was warm, steady, bridging the gap that silence had carved. I wanted to believe that everything would heal overnight, but life isn't that simple. Wounds take time. Trust takes time. Still, in that moment, I knew something had shifted. We weren't on opposite sides of the wall anymore. I looked at Daniel, then at Lily, and whispered, "Maybe this is our chance to begin again." And for the first time in a very long time, Daniel didn't look away. When I was younger, I thought miracles were grand, impossible things, heaven opening, prayers answered in flashes of light. But now, at 62, I know better. The miracle came in something smaller, something quieter. It was not that every wound was healed or that every tear was erased. It was that my voice, silenced for so many years, was finally heard. Daniel and I still have distance to cross. There are words left unsaid, trust that must be rebuilt one step at a time. But when I looked into my son's eyes and saw even the smallest piece of that boy I once knew, I felt a kind of peace I had long stopped believing in. And Lily, my sweet Lily, she became the bridge between us. Her little hand holding ours reminded me that family is never fully lost, even when broken. So no, my miracle wasn't a perfect reunion. It was simply this: the chance to begin again before it was too late. If you've ever carried silence in your family, if you've ever lived with words unspoken, I invite you to share your story. Someone out there may need to hear it.